So, why do we celebrate Chanukah? Celebrate the miracle. Which miracle? There's many miracles after Chanukah. There's the miracle of the war. They won the war. There's the miracle that they found the jug of oil. Right? There's a few miracles here. But what are we really celebrating? Is actually a difference of opinion. What is the main celebration of Chanukah? So first, let's make it clear. What are the three things, the three miracles of Chanukah? We don't usually refer to as the three miracles of Chanukah, but there is three miracles now celebrating Chanukah. Nitzachim hamilchamot. Nitzachim means the victory. Nitzachim, Nidam Natzach. Natzach means the Nitzachim of the war, victory of the war. Then this that we found, the Pach HaShemen, the jug of oil. And this, that it burned for 8 days. Hidlik, it burned for Shmoyne Yomim for 8 days. Now, generally, when it's discussed in the Svarim, it's discussed as the two miracles. There's actually three, but generally it speaks about the two miracles, the war and the jug of oil that they found that it burned for 8 days usually goes together. So now we're going to discuss why did they institute Chanukah? Because of the war or because of the jug of oil, which burned for 8 days, or for both? So everyone agrees that it's connected to both. But there's a disagreement. What was the main reason why they instituted Chanukah? Was it mainly because of the war? Or was it mainly because of the jug of oil that they found and burned for 8 days? Most opinions hold that the main reason why they instituted Chanukah was because of the oil. However, there is the opinion of the Rambam that says that the main reason of Chanukah is because of the war. And that's why we also find that the Rambam also holds that the victory of the war was actually on the 25th day of Chanukah. I think that was actually, Chanukah is the 25th day. The Chanukah was the words Chanukah. It rested on the 25th day of Chanukah. Chanu, that's this you know, right? Chanukah, Chanukah. Yeah. Right? Okay. But when was the victory of the war? When was the final defeat? Which date? Was it the 24th or 25th? Was the war concluded on the 24th and the rest on the 25th, or was the war over on the 25th? The Rambam actually holds that the victory was on the 25th day of Chanukah. Other opinions say it was on the 24th day of Chanukah. So the Rebbe points out that the Rebbe says we could explain that the reason why the Rambam holds that the main reason why the institute of Chanukah was because of the war is because the victory of the war was on the 25th day. So, based on that, the Rambam concludes, so the main reason why the institute of Chanukah was because of the war. Whereas other opinions say the victory of the war was on the 24th day of Kislev. So, if it's on the 24th, they come to the conclusion, and we know Chanukah begins on the 25th. That means that Chanukah was mainly instituted because of the jug of oil that was found on the 25th day of Chanukah. Now, the halacha is, most opinions hold that the main reason why Chanukah was instituted was because of the jug of oil that burned for 8 days, not because of the victory of the war. Of course, the victory of the war is included in the celebration. We thank Hashem for the victory of the war. We say Al Nisim, and we in the Al Nisim and Davening, we speak about the war. But the main reason is accepted in halacha is because of the jug of oil. And this has ramifications in halacha too, because is there an obligation to have a suda, to have a feast on Chanukah?
No.
Anyone else? There's no obligation. Purim?
Yes.
Yes. You know why? Why Purim yes and Chanukah no? Yeah, you learned about, did we discuss it here at all? Because Purim was a physical victory, Chanukah, yes, you know that, right? But that's based on the opinion that says that Chanukah was instituted because of the jug of oil. According to the Rambam, that it's instituted mainly because of the war, he holds there is an obligation to have a feast. It's not the halacha. So halachically, you have no obligation, but that's why halacha it's brought down. It's preferred that you should have something, but it's not an obligation because the halacha is like the opinions that say that Chanukah was mainly instituted because of the miracle of the oil, and not because of the war. Is there any questions before we go further? Is this clear? Anything that's I explained a little too fast?
I just have a general question, like where do these, like why are the rabbis not sure, like where do these different opinions come from?
Are they not sure when the war ended?
Or like, yeah, because I'm just thinking like Pesach, we know what we're celebrating, like what's there, there's no different.
Yes, how come we don't know when the victory of the war was? Was it the 24th or 25th?
No,
Chanukah is the least documented Yom Tov that we have. Chanukah, there's a lot of, you have the least information on it. In other words, in terms of accuracy,
okay,
in general, in terms of like the story of Yehudis. You know the famous story of Yehudis, she gave the generals the cheese and the wine and she chopped off his head. When did that story happen? Was it, some opinions say it happened, it was not connected to actually the miracle of Hanukkah, happened many years later, but it was because it came after, not too long after Hanukkah, and there was still, because after the Yom Tov of Hanukkah, they were still fighting the Greeks. You didn't have total freedom. They had freedom to keep Torah and mitzvahs. They got back to Beis Hamikdash, but the Greeks still have control over different parts of the country, and they were still fighting them. So, according to some opinions, the story with Yehudis happened many years, I don't remember exactly 25 years later, some say after the miracle of Hanukkah. There was a story with Yehudis, with Eliforni, who, made a siege around Yerushalayim, and then she went, and the whole story, as you know the story. So according to some opinions, it wasn't actually connected to Chanukah itself, but in Halach and the Gemara, they do mention it. I mean, they mention that the miracle happened through a woman. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch, so somehow it is Chacham feel it has a connection to Chanukah. So I'm just giving an example. There's a lot of details in the story of Chanukah that we don't have clear exactly, but this is a machlekes. When was the victory of the war? Was it the 24th day of Kislev? Was it the 25th? Okay. So that's why the meaning is we have Chanukah parties, we have Mekasuda, because there is the opinion of the Rambam that says you should have a feast. And it says, and if you want it to be a Sudas mitzvah, not just a regular supper, so then it says sing songs related to Chanukah, say Divrei Torah, say words of Torah on Chanukah, so then it becomes a Sudas mitzvah. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, another thing I wanted to discuss okay, let me bring out one more point. So most opinions hold that that Chanukah was instituted primarily in relation to the jug of oil and just that it burned for 8 days. Now, the question is, why is it? Did you learn about this? Why is it that the main celebration of Hanukkah is the jug of oil? If they wouldn't have the war, it would be nothing. They wouldn't be able to keep Torah and mitzvahs. The war was crucial. If they had to, and even if they wouldn't find the jug of oil, they would still be able, according to many opinions, they would still be able to light the menorah with defiled oil, because the halacha is that in a congregation, when there's a lot, especially Beis Hamikdash, even if the oil is defiled, so if you don't have any kosher oil, you use oil that's defiled. You have no option. So seems that the war was crucial for the freedom of the Yidden to keep Torah and mitzvahs. So why is there such an emphasis on the jug of oil? So it's explained that Hashem specifically made a miracle with the jug of oil to bring out and to express what was the victory of Chanukah. Being that Chanukah was primarily a spiritual victory, so Hashem specifically made a miracle, connection with the jug of oil, connection with the mitzvah, not just a regular mitzvah, a mitzvah with lighting the menorah. The Torah, in the pasuk it says, "Kinei mitzvah v'Torah." So Torah and mitzvahs is described with light. Kinei mitzvah, Torah. Torah mitzvah is described using light and candle. Why? Because within the physical, what's the most spiritual within the physical? To use a term more spiritual, meaning more within the physical, what is considered the least physical, or use the term the most spiritual within the physical? Meaning more, I mean spiritual, like connected to Hashem, but meaning that it's not as physical. It's the least physical within the physical. Light. We're not talking about a light bulb, because light bulb is a physical thing. But the idea of light, you can't feel light. Anything else even smell, scent, has a connection to something physical, because the scent is coming from something, and when you move away further, the scent is less and less. Light, in the physical world, is the most spiritual. So you want to describe, that's why we describe Torah mitzvahs, kinei mitzvah v'Torah. We describe Torah mitzvahs as light, because we want to give a description for Torah mitzvahs. We want to describe a Torah mitzvah so amazing. So how should we describe Torah mitzvahs? So Torah mitzvahs is ice cream. What are you going to say? You want to describe it in a way to. So we use the term light. Light, something that's amazing, and it's the most spiritual from the physical. That's what we use to describe Torah mitzvahs. So Hashem specifically made the miracle with the menorah, which menorah is light, represents Torah mitzvahs, to bring out that what was the miracle all about? The miracle was a spiritual victory and not a physical victory. That's why the halach is that Chanukah was instituted because of the miracle of the oil. Even though without the victory of the war we had nothing, but the victory of the war was not, that in itself was nothing. Even though without that we wouldn't have the spiritual victory. But once we have the spiritual victory, the physical victory, we could say, means nothing. In other words, in face of the spiritual victory, the physical victory has no value. So it has no value in itself. In itself, the physical victory has value, meaning that's why we thank Hashem for the physical victory. When we daven Shemoneh Esrei, in the Shemoneh Esrei, we say Al Nisim, and we thank Hashem for the physical victory. But it pales in comparison to the spiritual victory. It's like, the Rebbe gives an example that says, like, if you light a candle in daylight, does the candle give any light? Go outside and light a candle. Is adding more light? Nothing. Doesn't do anything. There's also, in face of the spiritual victory, the physical victory has no value in comparison to the spiritual victory. And that is why when we thank Hashem for the miracles, we don't thank Hashem for them both together. It's separated. We thank Hashem for the miracle of the oil when we light the menorah. And we thank Hashem for the victory of the war in Shemoneh Esrei. It's separated. Yeah.
So the spiritual victory was that we could observe Torah and mitzvahs.
Right. Okay. Now I want to talk about, now we mentioned that Al Nisim, we're going to talk about Al Nisim now. In the Al Nisim is something very interesting. It says in the Al Nisim that You remember that this one says, Mesarta givodim v'yad chaloshim v'rabim yad matim. You have given over, you're transferring over the mighty in the hands of the weak and the many in the hand of the few. Does that ring the bell to you from the davening? When you say that on this, so it says over there that when the Greeks wanted to take away, to make us forget the Torah and take us away from doing what Hashem wants, and you, with your great mercy, you stood by us in the time of our trouble, and you took revenge for us, etc. And then it says, we gave over the many in the hand of the weak. You gave over the mighty in the hand of the weak, and the many in the hand of the few. Then it says, you gave over those who are tummy, those are contaminated in the hands of the pure. And you gave over the wicked in the hand of the tzaddikim, the righteous. So the question is asked in the commentaries, we're thanking Hashem for the miracle. He gave over so that's a miracle. He gave over the giboyim, the mighty, in the hand of the weak, the many in the hand of the few. The amount of soldiers from the Greeks that came against the Jewish soldiers is like, in some of the wars they had over 100,000 soldiers, the Greeks. The Jews had, I think the most they had was like 10,000, somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000. It's different, see different numbers brought. That was a miracle. So in Halanism, we said we thank Hashem for the miracle, right? So anything that's written there is expressing the miracle. You gave over the mighty in the hand of the weak, the many in the hand of the few. Then it says, and the wicked in the hand of the righteous. That's a miracle. That's a miracle that he gave over the wicked in the hand of the righteous. That's just a fact. That has nothing to do with the miracle. That's a miracle that even though they were wicked and we were righteous, still Hashem gave over the wicked in the hand of tzaddikim. That doesn't make any sense, right? Correct? Following me? We're saying Hashem gave over the wicked in the hand of the righteous. And here we thank Hashem for the miracle. We're saying you gave over the wicked in the hand of the righteous. There's no miracle about that. That makes perfect sense. That Hashem should give over the wicked in the hand of the righteous. They should give over the righteous in the hand of the wicked. There's no miracle per se just in that statement in itself. When you say there was many in the hand of the few, that expresses the miracle. And even though we were small numbers, they were big numbers, but he gave the big and having the small numbers. That brings out a miracle. But there's nothing that brings out a miracle about saying that, and it's right out one after the other. You gave over the many in the hand of the few, and he gave over the wicked in the hand of the righteous. What's the miracle in that? You don't need a miracle. You don't need a special miracle that the wicked should go at the hand of the righteous. No, it's a statement for itself. Because you may be looking at it that it's part of it's just giving factual information. That the many in the hand of the weak was the wicked, but it's a statement for itself. Each one is a statement. We're expressing the miracle. So the commentaries ask that this must be part of the miracle. What is the miracle over here that you gave over the wicked in the hand of the righteous? And those who are tummy, those who are contaminated, the goyim, in the hand of those who are pure. You get the question? Is that right? Yeah. So the commentaries bring different answers, and they never discuss the sikh, they never asks questions and all the answers, because every answer has flaws in it. The Rebbe gives a very interesting answer, fascinating. The Rebbe says that when it says the wicked in the hand of the righteous, and those who are tum in the hand of the pure, we're not talking about the Greeks. We're not talking about that Hashem gave over the Greeks who are tummy in the hand of the Jews who are pure. The Greeks who are wicked in the hands of the Jews who are righteous. Not talking about the Greeks. Because the Rebbe asks another question, and a general question, doesn't even make sense. What does it mean the wicked in the hand of the right? Who's the wicked? Simple understanding. Wicked is the Greeks. They're the wicked and we're the righteous. If you're using the term wicked and righteous, that means you're talking about a person who potentially could become righteous. You're saying this person is wicked and he's righteous. This person is tamei, this person is pure. In other words, you're contrasting them in a way where it's inferred from here that this is someone who's tamei. Not, it's still tamei. This person is pure. This person is tamei. In other words, they say someone who's tamei, that means potentially could become pure. This person is contaminated. Oh, it's contaminated. That means he has potential to become pure. Wicked versus righteous means he's not right. He's still wicked. By goyim, the term tzaddikim, righteous, doesn't apply to them. The term doesn't fit for them. That doesn't mean that we're not trying to say that they can be good also. Not in a negative way, but the term, according to Torah, the term tzaddikim, righteous, doesn't apply to them. It never explains, don't recall the details, it never explains how that it doesn't apply, the term doesn't fit for them. Even if they're doing Shem Mitzvah, but the term tzaddikim applies to Yidden, not to Goyim. More details I don't recall now. And then the same Tamei v'Atayim. Tamei, contaminated, hands up here. The idea of Tuma only applies by something that has Kedusha. Because Tuma, impurity, gravitates to where there's holiness. There's a halacha that a non-Jew that dies, he's not metamei b'oil. No, there's a halacha of impurity. If there's an oil, there's a tent, and there's a dead person inside the house, and if you're inside, you become tummy because in the same place where the dead person is. But the dead person is a guy, then there's no tumor. The guy is not metamei b'oil because generally the laws of impurity don't apply by guy. It applies by Jews that have kedusha, that have holiness, and that's where the tumah, the impurity gravitates. Like in the morning, you have to wash negavas. Jews have to wash negavas, not non-Jews, because by going, the impurity doesn't come to them. It's only by Jews with this holiness, with impurity likes to get their they nurture, they get their energy from. So that's they gravitate to kedusha to see where they could get their hands on. So therefore, the Rebbe explains the term Tamei v'Atayim, Shem Yitzdikim, doesn't apply to the Greeks. So the Rebbe says when it says in the Alanisim that Hashem gave over the wicked in the hand of the righteous, and the wicked in the hand of the righteous, and impure in the hand of the pure, it refers to the Jews that became the Messiavim, the Jews that became Greeks. They didn't become Greeks. Whatever, you know what I mean, right? And they behaved like them, and they sort of became like them, right? That's what it means. That Hashem gave over the wicked, the Jews that became Greeks, in the hands of the Jews. And that's why they're called Tamei and they're called Hashem, because they were Jews. What do you mean he gave them over? That the Jews went and killed them? But it means that the Jews were able to overcome them. Because you have to understand, it made it more difficult. The fact that there were Jews that became Greeks, it became more difficult for the fighting because they were giving all information to the Greeks. That's one thing. And then there's another thing over here. There was more Jews that became Greeks than stayed, that had the Siddhis Nefesh to keep Torah mitzvahs. The majority of the Jews at that time became Greeks. So even in Torah, there's a concept called you go according to the majority. There's a rule, the majority rules. It comes out, plays out in many different situations. You go by majority. The majority of the Jews were not doing what they were supposed to. So there was reason, even in Torah, in the thinking through Torah, that the Jews deserve a miracle? No. Most of the Jews are not doing what they're supposed to. So that's what it means. Hashem gave over the Messiavnim in the hands of the Jews, meaning that though they were majority, and even according to Torah, there's a concept, you go by the majority. The majority of the Jews are not keeping Torah mitzvahs. You don't deserve a miracle. Still, Hashem made a miracle. And also, we said before that Hashem, that they made it harder because they had inside information they would give to the Greeks, and nevertheless, the Jews were able to overcome them. So it has two meanings over it. It said the wicked in the hand of the righteous, meaning that we were able to overcome though they were giving over information to the Greeks, we were able to overcome them. And also in the spiritual way that Hashem made a miracle, though they were more than us. And according to Torah, you go with the majority, nevertheless, Hashem still gave over the wicked in the hand of the righteous, meaning that we overpower them because of our level of Mesiras Nefesh. The Rebbe says from here you learn out that sometimes a person could look at the world and say, how are we going to get to the Geulah? How are we going to get to Mashiach? We have to, right? We're trying to change the world. We have shluchim, and we have to encourage people to keep Torah mitzvahs. That's a preparation for the Geulah, right? At this point in time, most of the Jews are not keeping Torah mitzvahs. So come on, where are we going? So that's the lesson of Chanukah. Even though they were a minority, nevertheless, because of their Mesiras Nefesh, they be able to overcome and accomplish what they needed to accomplish. And the same thing applies to every single Jew, whoever you are, that you have to realize that, in other words, it's not the quantity, it's the quality. It's the quality that overpowers. Because of our immense Mesiras Nefesh, they were able, in other words, back then, they were able to overcome and bring the miracle of Chanukah. And so to now, it's through our determination and Mesiras Nefesh of doing what we need to do that we can bring the Geulah. And the same thing applies to every person's individual Aveda. Because on a day-to-day, any person, day-to-day Aveda, most of the day, an average person is not involved with Torah mitzvahs. In yeshiva, it's different. But a regular person, he goes to work, most of the day, what is he doing? Most of the day, he's not involved with Torah mitzvahs. No, but he has a strong connection to Hashem because he does what Hashem wants him to do. Most of the day, maybe 80 to 90% of the 24-hour period, he's not involved with Torah mitzvahs. It doesn't matter because it's the part that he is involved with that becomes his main focus. This becomes his life. This is what his life is all about. In other words, if the time that you're involved with Torah mitzvahs, this becomes your life, this becomes your excitement, your enthusiasm, so that overrides, that overtakes everything. And then it ever goes further, and then it ever goes to the end of a Baal Tshuva. Sometimes a Baal Tshuva that becomes a Baal Tshuva late in life, and the Baal Tshuva says to themselves, for who knows how many years I was like, now I'm starting, but the majority of my years are, so what am I accomplishing? Never says that's the lesson of Chanukah. It's not about numbers, it's about quality. The power of a Yid, that if he's totally immersed and totally devotes himself to Torah mitzvahs, this overrides. This is all the lesson of Chanukah. Okay, so we still have some halachos I want to cover, and this is for Shabbos. So, if you forget Al Nisim, you don't repeat Amida. You know that, right? Okay. So, Erev Shabbos. Erev Shabbos. What do we do first? Do you know the Seder? What comes first? So we have over here. Oh, let me go back a little bit to this, just to point out something interesting over here. Yeah, because we're talking about, generally it's discussed the two miracles of Chanukah. One opinion says this is the main one. one opinion says the war is the main miracle that we celebrate Chanukah. Some say it's the jug of oil. But that's generally speaking, there's two miracles, but more specifically, there's three miracles. The victory of the war, jug of oil that it burned for 8 days, and the Rebbe pointed in the Maimon that it's actually on 3 separate days, because the miracle of the war was on the 24th day. And the Maimonim, many of the Maimonim, they go by the opinion that says that the miracle of the war was on the 24th day. Because Al Pi Chassidus, that's how they explain it in a certain way. And the Pach HaShemen was found on the 25th day, and the miracle that it burned for 8 days began on the 26th day. Does it make sense? Did it begin on the 26th day, the miracle of the oil? Began on the 25th day. But the Rebbe, the Maimon says, it began on the 26th day. So the Rebbe on the footnote explains that what it means is because what was the point of finding the jug of oil? They should burn for 8 days. So for the 25th day, they didn't need a miracle. So when did the miracle actually, so to say, begin? On the 26th, because that's when the purpose of finding the jug of oil was so on the 26th day it could continue burning. So that's why, in a sense, the miracle that it began burning for 8 days began on the 26th. But we celebrate the 25th, as we explained, because the main miracle is the jug of oil. And that also explains the reason why we didn't make anything special at 26th, because there's a certain level over here of Chanukah that's only going to be revealed when Mashiach comes. So therefore, in other words, there's a higher level. This explains a higher level. The miracle is actually on 26th, but that's only going to be revealed when Mashiach comes. And that's why the main celebration is on the 25th day, the jug of oil. Okay, now, cover some halachos. That is Erev Shabbos. This is the same as Erev Shabbos, so let's take this off the board. Erev Shabbos, the Seder is as follows. First goes Mincha. Then goes Ner Chanukah. Read it?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like this eraser is really working, or maybe I didn't. You see that one? Something.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the board or the eraser. No, it is. And then goes Ner Shabbos. Then goes Ner Shabbos. Now, if you were, in other words, if let's say you light Chanukah, then you do it before you light Shabbos candles. Now, of course, you do that, right? Wait till you finish, right? You always done mincha before Shabbos candles, and now mincha. But the point is, mincha comes before Chanukah lights, because in the Beis HaMikdash, mincha represents the evening sacrifice, and in the Beis HaMikdash they brought the afternoon sacrifice, the Talmud Shel Ben Arbaim, and then they lit the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. So that's why we keep the same way, mincha and then Chanukah, then the menorah. Now, even if the husband is lighting the Chanukah menorah and the wife is lighting Shabbos candles, still we keep the same Seder. Because if it's the same person, then of course if they do it this way. But even if it's not, if it's done this way, it's like this, people will never make a mistake. So first the husband lights Chanukah menorah and the wife lights Shabbos candles. And then, but let's see Shabbos. Now, a good piece of advice, and there is sometimes when you light the menorah, you want to be able to, let's say, light on a chair, put it in the doorway, and it's not always so convenient. You have to go around it, you have to get your way through. And then usually after you finish lighting the menorah, during the week, what do? You put away the chair, and you move the menorah. But Shabbos, you can't. So what you could do is, you put a chal on the chair, and then after it's like the menorah goes out, you want to move it, you could pick up, if you need a space, you could move the chair. Now, Matzah Shabbos, the Seder is like this. It depends if it's home or a shul. So Matzah Shabbos, we are discussing, let's say, Shabbos, and it depends. If it's in the house, then we do Havdalah. Okay, so here I'm discussing Motzei Shabbos inside the house, not in shul, in the house. In shul, it's different. Havdalah. First goes Havdalah, then goes Chanukah. Then we say V'yitzlecha. We usually say after Havdalah, we do it after Chanukah lights. In the shul, it's different. In the shul, that's home. Home. If shul, then it's near Chanukah, and then Havdalah. There's different opinions what comes first, and that's how the minhag somehow evolved that that's how it's done. So the shul first Chanukah and then Havdalah. An easy way to remember what comes first in the home, what is, I always say, home, Havdalah, it's both the H. House, Havdalah also starts with the H. House, Havdalah. That's how you're good with memorizing words, it works. Okay, and any questions? Yes. What's this?
Home, the last one.
Oh.
The last one, the last
V'yitzlecha. After Havdalah, there's a minhag that many people say V'yitzlecha. It's in the Siddur they say V'yitzlecha. It's blessings. So usually do it after Havdalah. But over here, we do Chanukah Minhag because our opinion say Chanukah Minhag comes first before Havdalah anyway. So if you're doing Havdalah first, at least do Chanukah Minhag right away. Then we say V'yitzlecha. Okay, and now the minhag to get Chanukah Gel, so we need Chanukah Gel too.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but Chanukah, everyone.
Rabbi Osdoba, I have a question.
Yes.
There's a halacha until the menorah.
Look of what?
Is there a halacha to not eat until the?
Yes, you're not supposed to eat before menorah, but the halacha of not eating applies to a sud, a meal, not a snack. So if it's a snack of fruit, it should not be mezayis, it shouldn't be cake or cookies. Actually, donuts seemingly is allowed because there's no kriya suda. It can't become a mitzi. It's like eating spaghetti, same thing. So donuts, it seems, should be okay. But I would say it's still better not to eat too much. Having one donut, but no mezainis. But a full meal, even though you're not washing, is an issue to have a suda, to have like a supper. So not everyone washes for supper, but you should not have a supper before. That's how generally it's accepted, that it even applies to women. Some are lenient because they say that the women aren't the ones who are lighting, but some say, but it's their obligation, so they still, so the chatchila, it should be avoided.
From when until when?
From when?
From when the stars?
From a half an hour before the mitzvah begins. Yeah, so good to have a full meal. Yeah. Recorded by us, the mitzvah we start lighting after sunset.
So it would be half an hour before sunset.
Then it begins the prohibition that you cannot sit down and have a full meal.
Okay.
Okay? Yes.
So just going back to the candle that we were learning in the beginning,
Yeah.
According to the rabbi's opinion of the oil not going down. So,
Oh, we discussed on the class about the miracle, how
Yeah,
the two
I-
opposites, yeah.
so according to the
Oh, okay.